Yep.
Okay, is that okay with you, President Burnham? I guess I
Yeah,
should
of
have asked that
course.
before.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
that's fine.
All right, so I'll just kick it off again by saying good morning, everyone. If my voice is a little raspy, I am getting over a cold. All the traveling finally has caught up with me. So, but I was not going to miss this morning's coffee conversation with President of Minnesota AFL-CIO, President Bernie Burnham. And so with that, I would just start it off, President Bernie. This is a informal, these are all friends. We're just going to have a conversation about labor and politics. And so before we get deep into it, maybe you could start off by introducing yourself, maybe a brief background, and how did you become the president of Minnesota AFL-CIO? And what does
Sure.
it mean to be president of Minnesota AFL-CIO?
What does it mean to be the president of the AFL-CIO? I'll
Yes,
say a
yes,
background first. That's probably easier.
yeah.
So, my name is Bernie Burnham. I am a teacher out of Duluth, Minnesota, and I'm an elementary teacher by trade. I was in the classroom for about 15 years up there, and then eventually got involved with I was a union member from the get-go, but ran to be on the executive board. We had a great labor management process in Duluth and was very involved in that at the elementary table, and then eventually ended up on our executive board. Became the president. I did that for about 5 years up there, and through that process, got involved with Education Minnesota at the state level. And They were great to us, and we did a lot of things in Duluth, like moving our folks into politics, actually. Teachers will tell you that they're very busy like everybody else, and it's hard to get folks to focus on other things outside of their classroom. But we did a lot of organizing and got people involved because, like all school districts, we had referendums to pass and school boards to try to get, education-friendly folks on our school board. So did that. And then Vice President Paul Mueller was retiring from Education Minnesota, so um, called then President Specht about that and said, "Tell me about that." And ended up running for president, or vice president, sorry, of Education Minnesota, and won that seat, where I sat for about 2 years. And during that process, I got involved at the Minnesota AFL-CIO on the newly formed Racial and Economic Justice Committee, which was formed shortly after the murder of George Floyd. And I was the representative for Education Minnesota. So I co-chaired that for a year, and then President McCarthy from the Minnesota AFL-CIO decided to retire, and I was asked to run for that position. And I said, well, two things: why and how long do I have to make the decision? And the why was that they appreciated the work I was doing at the Racial and Economic Justice Committee. I co-chaired that with Brian Thomas, who was a member of AFG at the time. And I had 5 days to make the decision. So it was a quick conversation with my daughters, who I go to. They're kind of my go-to for making decisions. And then fairly new partner in my life, and we talked about the question was, why do you want to do it? And I think, as a teacher, I always was, I mean, for me, a lot of things are grounded in how well children are doing. And so when I looked at the possibility of making a greater impact outside of education, I loved my job, for sure, and was wonderful to work with teachers. And again, that was all during COVID, which was very, those were hard times at first. As you know, teachers were elevated and raised up, and people were happy, and then the tides turned. And so we had a lot of folks going through a lot of hard things. But at any rate, I ran for the position of president of the Minnesota AFL-CIO, and here I sit today in this role about 3 years in. What does it mean? It means a lot of learning and a lot of listening and a lot of trying to bring folks together to work in solidarity. That's not always easy because at our legislature, things that drive our lives, there are a lot of things that can easily divide people, and that's due to funding in a big way. I'll just say that everybody has the interest of their members in their heart, and they should. That's to be expected. Those interests don't always align, and sometimes they are very different. So often during the legislative session, and more towards the end, we're doing a lot of fielding of phone calls and trying to get people to talk to each other and listen to each other, um, and just kind of hear where everybody's at and try to do our best to stay together. And like I said, sometimes it's great and it's successful, and other days it's not as successful. And that's a lot of my work is just continually trying to bring people together and continually learning and listening. So
Thank you.
that's
Thank
that's
you.
kind of my leadership style.
Yeah, and for those who are not as familiar with Minnesota AFL-CIO, can you explain the difference between the Minnesota AFL-CIO as far as unionism? Are they a union themselves, like M&A, Education Minnesota? Can you explain the difference?
I sure can. The Minnesota AFL-CIO is the Federation of Unions in the state of Minnesota. We have about 1,000 locals that are affiliated to us. So we've got, as you said, nurses, teachers, plumbers, pipe fitters, firefighters, grocery store workers, and it goes on and on, paraprofessionals that work in schools. A wide variety of folks under our umbrella. And we all try to do what's best for working people. So that's the difference. We're like the umbrella organization, and we all try to pull together.
Great. And for everyone joining, just a reminder, if you have questions, feel free to either ask your question in the chat or raise your hand. But I guess I'll start off with strategy and advocacy. I know that there's been, and we all know that there's been a lot going on in the political landscape. And we just recently had some wins, and you just talked about when there's differences. How does unions come together um, and align when it comes to decision making and endorsements? What does that process look like?
Yeah, so we have six regional offices throughout the state of Minnesota. We have one in Northeast, the Northeast Area Labor Council. We've got the West Area Labor Council, East Central, which is right around the St. Cloud area. We have Southeast, which is down by Rochester, and then we've got Minneapolis and St. Paul. So when a person chooses to run for office, what they do is they contact our folks, or our folks hear about them. We've got leaders in each of those offices, and then they would fill out a questionnaire and go through an endorsement process with the bodies that are in each of those areas. So each of the six offices also has a board of folks and delegates that are there. And when it comes time for election season, they hold endorsement processes. Was just on yesterday. We're talking about this with our group, and Chelsea Globitz, who is the president of Minneapolis, said next year they expect to have about 300 different endorsements because it goes from school board to city council to counties and then the state and federal offices. When their recommendations come from each of those bodies, then it comes to our Minnesota AFL-CIO COPE board, and we bring the process forward. Usually, 99% of the time, we hear what is said at the regional offices, and sometimes it goes through very smoothly. There are other times when, the different regions, some work together on different sectors depending on what the lines look like, the boundaries are. And then oftentimes, not often, but once in a while, there are differences of
Oh
opinion,
yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
it's a process.
And there's a question in the chat about which regional office covers Dakota County. And do you know?
Yeah,
I'm sure
St.
you
Paul.
know.
St. Paul, yes.
Ron, does that answer your question?
Oh, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I know when there is differences, how does union resolve those differences when there's strong differences on endorsements? Because if you have a major union endorsing another one now, how do you come to terms with that?
Well, I mean, as you can well imagine, we have our larger affiliates have the most delegates, and so we actually come down to a voting process at our general board at the final part of it, and um, there's conversation, and sometimes people are happy and sometimes people are not so happy. I mean, everybody doesn't win all the time. That's just kind of the reality. And I think what we try to in the end run is once the endorsements are made, we try to work together then to support the candidates that have been endorsed. Again, it's not a given that everybody's happy with the process, but Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't.
Right.
So, yeah.
And so let's shift gears a little bit. We know that we just come off of some wins. I guess the question is, would you say, and would the union members say that we are should be celebrating right now? And what's next? How are they feeling? What are the
Yeah,
membership
I mean,
saying
I
about the
think
political
I
climate?
I think in light of what's happening today, I think again there are differences of opinion, right? I mean, some people are happy with everybody that won, and I think there's a um, like a little sigh of relief. I think some shoulders have dropped slightly, just kind of knowing what the landscape looks like overall. Um, but I think there are also, places where people are like, okay, well, we'll see. We'll see now with what happened, what's that going to look like for everybody. I think overall, I mean, the conversations I've had in the last few days since Tuesday is that people are feeling hopeful, that it looks like it is a change in the rhetoric that we're hearing from Washington, D.C., and that people are tired of that, and that hopefully we are on a path to, making things better for working people. I mean, because ultimately that's our work is right is to work to make things better for working people. And again, as I said, for me, it's you start with the children. If they're doing okay, then their families are probably doing okay. Communities are doing better. So um, that's the way I address it usually at our board, and I would say most of the time we do okay.
Okay. I think Ron, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. I have this bad habit of asking lots of questions since I moderate so often, but I'm really interested in understanding how Democrats can pull together. We've been so fractured over issues and over demographics that I wonder if there is a central theme and a central message that worked last Tuesday that we ought to be focusing on now and going forward. The bottom of my email has a tag. It says focus. It's the economy, stupid. And in fact, I think I heard that one of the local Republicans was quoted on KARE 11 as saying it's the economy, stupid. Is that it? Is that how we need to focus? And all of the other issues can kind of fall in to the economics of the day?
I mean, I think obviously that is, that's feels like that's the biggest thing that everybody is trying to focus on. I think at the moment we know there are a lot of people who are hurting due to things that are happening federally, and being an educator, I can tell you just with the loss of SNAP benefits and how people are struggling to try to make ends meet. I've been out having conversations with educators, traveling with the leadership team of Education Minnesota, and hearing educators talk about the rise of their healthcare costs is incredible. I was in one conversation where a district very small, they were quoted an increase in their insurance of 59%.
Yeah.
How do they, and you've got people who the other night we heard folks talking about their members who are young women who want to start families, but they can't. They can't afford the insurance. They know that it's expensive. They're choosing between going to the doctor and not, more often not. They're choosing between getting medication and not, more often not. So all of those things, the lack of just basic needs that people have are all part of what's happening in the economy. And if we can't right that ship, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we all talk about this and are very aware that there is a huge split. The rich are getting richer and the people at the bottom are struggling more and more. And it's not just the people at the bottom anymore. I mean, you talk about young people who are coming out of school and trying to start new careers and trying to start their life. It's incredible. I mean, it's unaffordable for them to try to begin with everything that's in front of them. And this healthcare stuff, we have to figure that out. People should not be, and it's not just educators, right? I think of all the people that we work with and represent. I think about people in hospitality and, immigrants who are working in those areas and they're coming here to this country thinking they're going to get a better deal. It's not working out for them. So
And
I think that's all of our responsibility. Does that help,
dis
Ron?
it does, but despite all of that, working class men, typically white men, have been leaving the Democratic Party.
Mhm.
And they're the ones who are harmed as much, if not more, than the people that you just described.
Yeah.
How do we get them back into the Democratic Party? What's the role of labor in making that happen? Can you, as the head of Minnesota's AFL-CIO, help draw some of those folks back into voting for Democrats?
Or what's the process of drawing them in, I guess I would
Yeah,
say.
what is the process? That's a
Yeah.
great question. I have been saying, and that's why I'm on the road a lot these days. I'm out listening to people. I want to hear what it is that is turn them off, or I mean, because we have to listen first, right? You can't just say, "Oh, well, you left, and too bad for you," but we've got to hear what are their real concerns. That long gone are the days of unions telling their members who to vote for
Hmm.
sure.
Right.
We have to be listening about what their concerns are and what impacts their lives. And until we understand where they're really coming from, um, I really don't have the answer at the moment, Ron, to be honest with you. I think we've got to do a lot of listening to people and really hear their concerns and try to write those concerns. And that's not easy. I mean, I certainly don't have all the answers, but I think for me, it's always bode well to go and listen first and then try to pull people together and try to get them to understand one another. When I first came into this role, with COVID just behind us, there was a long period of time when folks hadn't talked to each other and they had made decisions that impacted each other, and people were angry. And so we did a lot of small group sessions where we had leadership talking and listening to each other. And I said, you might not even like each other at the end of this conversation, but I need you to hear what is important to that union and their members. And then you'll get a chance to speak too. And I think it's helped a bit open the doors, but we still have lots of work to do.
So President Bernie, I know that you said you've been on the road, you've been talking to community, and to Ron's point, I mean, not just white men, but I know talking to communities of color.
Yeah.
So many people are just agitated, but with our landscape the way it is that you talked about SNAP dollars and insurance costs, what are you hearing? What are people saying to you, if you don't mind sharing some of those comments?
I mean, I think they are, for one, they're very stressed. They don't know how they're going to make ends meet. Um, they really have no idea what it's going to look for them tomorrow. Um, People are losing things that they have. They're having a hard time making their rent or their mortgage or those kind of things, and they're just looking to somebody. And I would say, Ron, I think you're right. They're looking to the Democratic Party to try to come up with some answers, and um, I am as concerned as anybody else about what that looks like and how we pull together to find a path forward so that people believe in, the work that is being done or that needs to be done. I think, and I don't know how you all feel, but I feel like at the moment there's no real clear um, person who has the answers. And I don't know if they're looking to one person or what exactly people are looking for, but they are very concerned just for their own life. And let's talk about jobs that are being lost too, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
folks don't know if they're going to be working tomorrow. All of our federal employees who are, off or on furloughed right now or laid off, or they have no idea really what's going to happen. And so that's a
Who do
fear.
they
I,
blame?
I was going to ask that question, Ron. Are they, who are they blaming? Are they frustrated with the Democrats, Republicans, or all of us? Who are they blaming?
Well, it's interesting.
Because we have some leaders on right now that I'm sure would love to hear. We
Yeah,
have
I mean, I think
Representative Liz Breyer, Gary, and Senator Carlson.
sure. I think depending on who you're talking to, they're blaming anyone from their union leadership to representatives to the federal government to, I mean, it's kind of everybody at the moment. I don't think you can solidly say because the longer this shutdown goes on, everybody's going, why can't the two sides come together? So it's a frustration for sure for people. They don't understand how there can't be. I mean, and we see it every day, right? You hear, I think the Republicans are solidly on message about blaming the Democrats every
Mhm.
day in a very
Mhm.
loud way.
Mhm.
I don't know that what the Dems, and I'll count myself as one, are as loud in pushing back. So I worry about that. But the message every day from, Speaker Johnson is that the Democrats are not coming to the table. The Democrats are not voting, even though he has sent his members home and they haven't been there.
Right.
So I think people are just, they're so scared and worried. They really are looking for anybody. And if you happen to be the person in the room at the moment, you don't have an answer, it could be you, right? Because they're not always happy with me either. So, you know,
Yeah, yeah. I'll ask Representative Ryer or Councilmember Hanson or Senator Carlson. They have a comment to what President Bernie stated. Any one of you?
Yeah, if I could just comment, I think people are probably aware that I'm active in Democratic municipal officials. I'm on the board, and we have a strong relationship with labor organizations nationally. We have a national advisory board, which is comprised primarily of labor organizations, ASCME and the American Federation of Teachers and uh, the Iron Workers and Teamsters. And I'm just kind of wondering what we might be able to do, Bernie, locally in working with the Minnesota AFL-CIO in reaching out not only to recruit candidates to run for office locally, but
mhm.
how can we get back in with the good graces of the voters?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we have a union member candidate program, and so we are encouraging folks all over the state to either identify or recognize members who they think would be good to serve in office. We obviously believe that union members have the heart of the folks that they work with and represent at their best interests, and so that's growing a little bit more every year, and we've had some great candidates come out of that program. Um, yeah, these are interesting days because I'm often at a loss for trying to come up with an answer about what it's going to look like and what it's going to take. And I don't know how all the rest of you feel, but um, we have a lot of work to do. And I'm actually heading in December to Los Angeles to the DNC, so I'll be interested to see where we're at working on that level, to make things right and to try to find a path forward.
Well, and I also wanted to mention that I'm on DMO's political council, and we do endorse candidates nationwide. We endorsed more than 300 candidates for local office, and about in the recent elections, about 75% of those were successful. And
Yeah,
so I'm just trying to figure out, if there are relationships that we can establish locally that can have that rate of success. I think that'd be great.
yeah, I
Yeah,
agree with you.
thank you. And I think Representative Ryer is next, and then Kurt, I see your hand. Curtis.
Hey, well, first of all, President Burnham, it's so good to see you. Thank you for being here with us. Appreciate your partnership and all the work that labor across the board does. Um, I'm hearing two things when I'm talking to people. On the one hand, I'm hearing these deep economic concerns and the fear and worries about grocery costs and all of the things that are healthcare, loss of income. Um, and to me, that's really required a lot of leading with empathy and hearing, exactly what you talked about, listening to people and understanding what the concerns are. Then the other thing I'm hearing is, will there actually be an election in 2026? And that whole thread is calling for, you know, be angry, fight,
Hmm.
so it's this combination of finding solutions together and protecting our system that I think adds a lot of nuance to the conversation with voters. I'm doing a couple of things. I have a bill that I'm going to be bringing forward, moving forward in 2026. It's the Educator Group Insurance Plan, or EGIP. It's a statewide insurance pool to get at the cost of healthcare and the variability. Some of the most expensive plans are also the worst plans, and make it really hard for people, not just teachers, but all people in the education system, the K-12 system, to be able to make it. Um, this is a place too where I think there's a really good bipartisan message. Representative Greg Davids, who's a leader in the GOP in the House, is the second author and really wants this to happen. He sees the values. So I think it'll give us a really concrete, we can work together on a place where our values are supported. I think it's really important to send a message that we will work together to find solutions, but we will not sacrifice our values. And it's good to find places where that can be the case. Um, the other thing I just want to mention is that things that we can do. On later this month, I'm going down to Fairmont, Minnesota, to visit the DFL, one of their meetings. I'm going to Wilmer on December 1st
Mm.
to visit the DFL. And then, like December 8th or so, I'm going up to do a little road trip to Bodette War Road and up that part of the state. And they haven't had someone who isn't their own rep up there in years and years and years. And so to me, it's like sp spreading the message to people who are trying so hard on the DFL side, um, to feel invested in it and just not feel lost. It's something that all of us can do. And so let me know, give me a shout if anyone wants to be my road buddy. I'm already booked for the northern Minnesota. I'm turning it into a hiking or snowshoeing trip with a friend. But, if anyone, seriously, if we go as a little group, people going to say, you matter, and you're in a ruby red district, but you're not forgotten. I think that's a really important message. So, and I'm always looking for other ideas from people on ways to um, broaden our contact, especially in communities that uh, have not been heard, have not been included, and to say, who are our ambassadors, who
Mhm.
for the DFL, and who can be moving forward to take these elected seats so that everyone sees themselves at the table, not just being told they belong at the table, but see themselves at the
Mhm.
table, be at the table. So we need to do much more of that too.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you. I think Curtis, you're next, then Jennifer, then Senator Colson. Oh, Curtis, you're muted.
I was going to say really briefly, we were talking about the subject of blame earlier, and I think being in the Democratic Party, we talk a lot about process and how outcomes are achieved. But I think the further you get away from politics, the less political people get, the less they care about the process, and the less they care about blame.
Mm.
And the more people care about just outcomes. And I think we need to not get lost here and just remember that the outcome is what matters too. And I think arguing about who's to blame for the shutdown or who's to blame for the high cost of housing or anything else is just can be a little unproductive just because at the end of the day, people want results.
Mhm.
And if we focus on results, getting results, I think that's the key to success. I don't know what Bernie or anyone else thinks about that or Liz, but that's my thought.
Well,
President Bernie.
yeah, I'd agree with you, Chris. I think ultimately people are so like they're concerned with their own self, right? And their family and what's in front of them. I mean, they don't often, and between working and, taking care of your family and all those things, you don't really have time even to pay attention to what's happening. You know what's happening in your household. And so what you're looking for is some relief. And I think you're right. How do we get to a point where, because I'm like you, I mean, there's a point where, okay, what's done is done, but how do we get to where we should be? Right? I mean, I think that's, and how do we have conversations
It's a
about
good idea
that?
for everybody to have the app on their
Oh,
phone.
Sasha, can you mute, please? Thank you. Jennifer, you're next.
I wanted to add, I think that we're in a tough negotiations right now, and labor leaders understand that totally. But the rank and file apparently and the constituencies out there don't understand that you have to go all in and not give any hostages when you're negotiating. And that's what's happening at the Capitol right now. So I think our message is getting better on being tough and strong, but there's no acquiescing to the Republicans and saying, yeah, we'll trust that we're going to work this out after we get back to the government. That's not going to happen. And I also wanted to add a little something about social democrats. I think we need to be listening to the issues that they are raising up. And we used to be so frightened. The Republicans got us on that when they'd say, oh, it's socialism, it's Venezuela. You guys are going to be having us all in jails. Well, I'm not the one seeing us all in jail. I'm seeing fascists doing that and needing to label and not be afraid of using labels as the Republicans have used against us.
Mhm.
We need to own it and say, you're right. You're a fascist. You're a scumbag. If you can say that about Hillary Clinton, I can say that about you.
Mm.
Thank you. President Bernie, I think it was just more of a comment.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay. Senator Colson?
Yeah, thank you. I'm I hear what people are saying. However, I think that we need to differentiate between what's closely at hand and what is dimly off in the distance. Close at hand right now is a special session. We need to have a special session. We need some things to be done immediately. And we can't do it because we have this very close balance of votes. And what people are not aware of is who is um, on one side and who is on the other. And I don't mean to say this establishes blame, but it does establish uh, a certain support of a person and of a party. And so there's reason, I think, to be able to explain that. If, I'm sorry, is there someone needs to speak? Uh,
No,
anyway,
you're fine, Senator Colson.
okay. And so what we need to do is we need to make sure that people know what is on the table and who is maybe on either side, because we can't have a special session because we don't know what some votes might be. I maybe know a couple of things more than what the public knows. And I can't really say that. I can't really say some of those things because they're from my own party. And we only have potentially one extra vote in the Senate, and we're tied in the House. And what we need to do is we need to actually change a mind or two to agree with what we're hearing out in greater Minnesota.
Mhm.
And I think that's where, and like I mentioned in the chat, what are these people saying? And do they connect their concerns with their vote? And do they know who's on one side or the other? And this goes for the entire elected um, representation. I'm really pissed that we can't find out who is voting which way on amendments to the federal bill that's preventing us from getting the government shutdown done. Because we don't see that in the newspaper. Only if you really, really dig into things do you find out that somebody didn't vote, somebody voted no, somebody voted present, somebody didn't even show up to vote. And those are the things I think we need to have the populace know about, and then they can write uh, that objection to their representative or senator. And locally, we need to do the same thing. Um, I know that we have some uh, people in the Democratic legislature that have a certain excuse for not voting one way or the other. And we haven't publicized that, and no one wants to publicize that, it seems. Um, I'm losing patience with that totally. And uh, I have to say that, there are certain things in my personal life here that are making me a little bit more insistent on getting that out there. I'm really ready to name the person in the Democratic Senate who won't vote for a gun bill.
Mm.
And this means to me that they value their reelection greater than they value the lives of children. And I think we need to say that.
Yeah.
And had I had a little bit more time, I would have shown you some things as my background. But um, my particular opponent in the last election was a gun nut. And he claimed to even go up to Minneapolis and protect a tobacco shop, putting on body armor. Now, I don't think he did. I don't know for sure. But and I do know that he spent some of his campaign funds to buy more body armor. Now, we don't need that. In fact, we even put together a bill and passed it that you can't do that. Um, but now the Republican Party did recommend that he rescind his endorsement, and he's gone now. He's working on one of these offshoot parties. But and I can tell you, and I'll tell you, this is the biggest group I've ever told this to, is that he was being monitored by the FBI during the election. There was one other person, the husband of another candidate, who was monitored by the FBI. Now, no one knows that. And I think that's really kind of uh, that's the voters not knowing what's going on. And I think if they knew that, they would say, whoa, whoa, wait a second. We don't need that kind of person in the legislature or in the Senate. And those are the kinds of the pieces of information that I think the voters need to know. They need to know what the bills are that we already have written. We have 5,000 bills right now that we could pass, that we could push forward. But, I don't think that there's 10 people that could name 10 bills or the sponsors of those bills. And I know Liz Ryer has a lot of really good bills. She's been working hard, and I don't think the public knows how hard she's worked and what bills she's working on, and especially those bills that are going to help with this issue of not being able to afford their health care. And I think what we need to do is we need to have more information getting to the particular districts that some of the people who are just have their heels dug in to follow MAGA, that we need to make sure that the people do know it, that this can help them. It can help farmers with their health care bills. It can help a lot of people with their child care bills. It can help people getting food. And we need to make sure that that is publicized and publicized by the people that some of the people that are on this video. So I think information is the biggest, let's say, the biggest tool we have,
Mhm.
and we need to get that out there. So it's, um, I can tell you, like I say, I've got a personal thing that's making me very, very insistent on that and insistent in the next few months.
So,
And
Senator Colson, what is our ask for labor? But these issues that you
our
raised,
answer,
real
feed us
briefly,
back,
briefly.
feed us back the information. Give us what is your concern, and let's relate it to a bill that's in the legislature right now that can help them, because we do have those things. There's no point in talking about the 2028 election or anything like that. We need people helped now. So
Thank you.
if
Thank
you
you,
get
sir.
information, send it back to us personally in groups like this or to the DFL. Make sure that everyone knows this farmer is really up against it. He's going to lose his farm. All you need to do is look through the paper and find out every day there's lists of people that are losing their homes. And there are things that we might be able to do to help people stay in their home. There's nothing better than to have a person stay in their home instead of getting kicked out and put into the homeless camps.
Thank you,
So,
Senator.
Yeah.
sure
Um,
thing.
President Bernie, I don't know if you have a response to
Well,
that.
I sure, I appreciate a lot of what you have to say, Senator, for sure. And I think you're right. I mean, we are in the process now of beginning to start our legislative list. We pull our folks together and have conversations about what's important to each of our affiliates. Obviously, as a whole, we work on our top five, four or five usually, and then we still have the list of all the concerns that everybody has, and we're willing to work on all those things as we can. But I think that we have enough folks connected too that we could have more conversation with our legislators and, we talk to the governor's office and other folks that we're connected with and share the concerns of our members and the members across the state. Um, I think, the interesting part, I think you're right about education, I mean, everybody, right? I mean, I think the thing that I find hardest today is that our news is slanted to what we want to see, and the algorithms do that to us, so that's a big thing that we're fighting, right? And to get out, and again, I think Liz, you're right, going out and listening to people and hearing what they have to say, and then often trying to take time to tell them what you know and present facts, and that but I think education's huge in this, and it's people's willingness to listen is part of the problem. I mean, because again, we all get our news the way we get it, and it's very one-sided sometimes, depending on if you're not willing to listen to it all and you're only hearing one side, then, it's that old thing about keep telling them and they're going to believe it, right? I mean, I think, Liz, I'm with you. I'm as concerned about the next big presidential election as anybody. I mean, who knows? I think we'll be fine. I'm gonna knocking on wood for that because I have to believe that our processes are going to hold and that people will do the right thing. But it is a concern, and again, there are enough people that listen to the president every day and believe everything he has to say. Don't ask me why. I don't understand it, but um, I think that they're okay with the rhetoric that he spews, and that's a scary, scary fact.
Thank you. So I know that we have 15 minutes and I just want to shift gears a little bit. You, President Bernie, earlier you talked about job loss. We've seen cuts across different, I would say, jobs, regardless whether they're union or not. But I know that well, I guess my question is, has labor experienced a lot of cuts, union membership? And AI, how does AI play a role into it?
Yeah, that's something that we're, trying to work with every day. I mean, knowing that it is here and it's going to impact people, how do you figure out how to use it to the benefit of the working people, right? So, the National AFL-CIO has a group that's working on that all the time, and we're listening and learning there. I think, as far as the loss of jobs across all, a lot of those are due to cuts that are happening, and just the crazy rulemaking and lack thereof, trying to break unions. And this doesn't just impact unions, right? I mean, any job that's lost, it impacts the whole community. So it goes across the spectrum. Those are things that we're concerned about, and we're concerned about the National Labor Relations Board that's been weakened, and therefore there's no one to fight for um, union contracts and grievances and those kind of things. No one's there to stand up to say this is wrong, you're doing the wrong thing.
Right.
And so we have to continually have that fight. We have lots of folks, including our own Attorney General, right, who are filing lawsuits, and they're a number of our large international unions who are on board with all of that too and filing lawsuits every day trying to fight back. So I think it's just work that we're going to continue to be doing and fighting the fight. And I'll tell you, I mean, I find hope in the big rallies that we've had
Right.
over the last number of months, and I feel it feels like every time there's the next one that grows, right? And so more people come out, um, and I think those are moments that feel good, and that give people hope. And I think, last Tuesday's elections gave people some hope too.
Yes, it was labor that organized the Minneapolis event, correct?
That's right. Yeah. Well, we're at a table. It's not just labor, but we are at a table with Indivisible and 50 whatever the numbers are.
50501.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. So we sit together in coalition and organize those things. Yeah.
We had 2,000 people on a street corner in Egan on No King's Day.
It's
Yes,
fantastic.
Egan was representing. We did a
Yeah.
great job.
It was really encouraging to see all the people out.
Yes. And
So
I think Ron had a question.
Well, I do, and I'm not sure whether I want to talk about the micro or the macro. I always struggle with the urban-rural divide, particularly when we have statewide constitutional elections like we do coming up in 360 days. And you could talk about what Curtis put his finger on it when he said the issues don't matter because every day to most people they're not paying attention, they're going to work, they're feeding their kids, and we overanalyze stuff like this as we try to figure out how to win the next election. All that said, sometimes there's one issue that sticks, and I'm worried about Governor Walz and his race, and I'm worried about the Medicaid fraud question and whether that will stick, whether you're hearing that on the doors as you're talking to people, and if that's something that we can just let the Republicans scream about because it's a non-event, or is it going to be a big deal, particularly in rural Minnesota, which doesn't necessarily love Governor Tim Walz? Any thoughts on that?
well, I think there's a lot of other reasons that they don't love Governor Tim Walz. I mean, sadly, it's not just about the Medicaid and the fraud stuff. I'll be honest with you. I think most people are not really, I mean, like they hear it, it's kind of in the background. But again, I think they're so concerned with what's right in front of them every day, what's impacting them. And I can tell you, I mean,
Mhm.
in the last big election, even being on the phones or texting, was a lot of the work that I did. And there were even, he's a teacher, and there were even educators that are not a fan of the governor, sadly. Um, but I think people are just that fraud stuff is for those who are kind of in the know. But I would say overall membership is just like I will tell you the trades for sure. It's about their jobs. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really what it boils down to,
I
whether
really,
they're
I
working or
really,
not.
I'm really glad to hear that because one of the responses to the fraud issue is to elevate it and say we're dealing with it. The other is to just quietly deal with it and not elevate it. I think the latter is what you're suggesting that we ought to do, not give it life, not give it oxygen.
Yeah, I would not pretend to tell them what to do with that, but I will say that most people are not, at least in conversations I'm having, I'm not hearing that.
I'm glad to
Because
hear
they're concerned with what is impacting them right now today.
that. Okay. I see
Mhm.
Yeah.
Christos has his hand up.
Yeah, Christos.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for being here, President Burnham. I really appreciate your time. I was very recently the union steward for Local 8 for 8 years. I worked for the Ramsey County Attorney's Office, and one of the issues that we faced with our membership was frequently questioning why already we have affordability issues everywhere, and why then are we paying $65 a month out of already limited funds for the work that you're doing, and what value does that have for us? And I think that it sounds like, I know you mentioned before this, gone are the days of the union voting with you just because they're a member, and it's really about getting to individual members. And one of the things that I found was going and talking to people, like they may have different political views, they may have different views about a whole bunch of things, but really it's about the values and saying, that, as a collective bargaining organization, we're here for everybody, and this is what your comparison looks like here compared to Iowa, for example, where a lot of unions have sort of dissolved. But it was really this sort of like person by person process of strengthening already the folks who are members and questioning that membership. I also think there's like this crisis in generational difference between folks kind of coming in and not knowing the history of unions, not seeing all the progress that was made in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And then at the same time, you have a countercurrent of people coming in who are realizing, as you say, recent graduates, and seeing that the market really is not good for them. There isn't a lot of places to go, and union at least provides a path forward. And I see multiple points of really connecting and supporting labor across the board. And I was just curious. So to the question, after all that, I know you mentioning, listening to folks. What are you hearing, and what is the sort of plan inside of the AFL-CIO of connecting folks to that labor message? And really, are you seeing it sort of grow in the past 2 to 3 years, or what are you seeing of that sort of internal dissension that might exist in some union circles?
Sure. Well, certainly there's growth, right? I mean, there's a lot of young people who think that the a union is a good way to go, and they're interested to look at Starbucks and Amazon and Half Price Books and all of those places. So they're young people who want to be a part of the labor movement because they see the importance of having numbers and being together and building that strength. Um, we have currently have a program, and you've probably seen this if you're any bit aware of the Minnesota AFL-CIO and even the National AFL-CIO. It's called "It's Better in a Union," and we actually have we've had a couple of forums around that, and we go out around the state to different areas, usually based on our hubs, that are out there. And they pull folks together, and we have conversations about why it's better in a union. How has that impacted your life, and how does that help you, uh, have the salary and benefits that you have today? Obviously, there are unions who their members aren't making a living wage. So that's something that's continually worked on, but they see the power of people standing together and trying to push that forward. We think, and my question always is for the leadership is what are the basic foundations of being a union member or being part of a union, and why is that important? I mean, I think people believe that they want to be able to afford their life, so they need a decent salary. They want to have benefits, right? They want their children to get a good education. So all of those things that we do when we work together impact each other, right? When there's a referendum and unions stand together and come out and support school districts, that means that there are jobs that are going to come forth because of whether it's new construction or other things that have to happen. So I think continually pulling people together and when you talk about being on strike lines, you see different unions coming together and
Yeah.
supporting. You're not alone, right? I mean, it's not just your union that's standing there. There are a lot of people supporting you. I mean, look, we've even got doctors now who are forming unions, and there are a lot of folks out on those lines the other day. Great support for them and important because their job impacts our healthcare, right? I mean, the things that they're dealing with impact the care of patients. Same with nurses, you know. Um, so I think having those conversations and really having different unions in the room to share what's important to them as each other, that helps people understand why they have what they have and why. I mean, I think we believe, and I say this all the time, we're in Paul Wellstone state, right? We all do better when we all do better.
That's right.
So I think that's the bottom tagline always. And there are days, obviously, that people, again, like I said, we don't always get along, but we sure work hard at it.
Well said. Well said, President Bernie. Thank you. Well, as we, excuse me, wrap up our last 5 minutes, I guess my question is, what's missing? What does labor need from us, from politics? What's missing? What haven't we said yet?
I will just say, and you've heard this, I know that both of the senators have heard this, that, oftentimes we work hard to get folks elected, and then sometimes it feels like after they're elected, they don't always support the things that working people need. So how do we do that better and how do we hold people accountable? And I think it works both ways, right? I mean, I think there are things that we can do too to support folks. And, we hear a lot of times that we don't elect Republicans. Well, we will if they support labor and if they follow that. It just happens that a good portion of the time, it's usually the Democrats that are more willing to support working people. At least that's, the way it feels to us and the way it looks and from just past history. Um, that's what we've seen and that's what we do. So I think, continuing to have open conversations, and I really do feel like for the most part in Minnesota, we have great relationships with most of our representatives, the ones that work with us. So we do, I know it's not in real time, but we do at the end of every session, post voting records. So people know, who's voting with them and who's not. And so all of our affiliates are aware of that and they can look to that to see, what conversations need to be had moving forward.
And with that, do you do scorecards?
We do. Yep. Yep.
Thanks.
We sure do. And people like to hold their 100% voting record up.
Yeah.
We like them to hold their 100% voting record up.
Well, before I give you the closing comments, President Bernie, there's a question in the chat about how to reach you.
Oh, sure. T, you've got all my
Yep, I
information, and
do.
please
I do.
feel free. You can reach me through the Minnesota AFL-CIO. Just call our
Yep.
office, and I am available to anyone anytime. I'm happy to talk, and if you want me to come out and talk to a group, I'm happy to do that too, union or not. I think it's important for us to be aware of what everybody's thinking um, in these times. What we do, I hope, lifts up the rest of the community. And it feels like when there is a strong um, union presence, that the communities genuinely do better because it helps raise the wages of everybody around. So, yeah, feel free to reach out anytime.
Thank you. And before we turn it over to our chair, Curtis, do you have any closing comments?
Well, I'll just say thank you for having me today. I appreciate this conversation very much, and I think we are all interested in making the world right, whatever that looks like. But I think, again, I'll just say for me, it is about when we know our kids are doing okay, we know our families are going to do better, and it just keeps moving up that way. So um, it is certainly conversation we have all the time, and labor needs to be at the forefront of working for everybody. And it is something that I stand and live by. And I think the folks that work in our office are all of that same mindset. And so we work hard every day to try to do what's best for Minnesota. And I mean, hence we have been, and it's not just us. We work in partnership with our legislators and other coalitions. And Minnesota has often been raised up and talked about on the national level. So appreciate all the work we do in partnership.
Thank you so much for joining us, President Bernie. Thank you. I know you've been busy. I've seen you on the lines. I've seen you've been very busy. So thank you for taking time
Of
to
course,
talk to us. And until we talk again, take care.